start where you are, use what you have, and do the best that you can consistently. Your small steps do not have to be grand to be great, and you can change worlds with a series of small, consistent steps.
Welcome to the HR L&D Podcast with your host, Nick Day, CEO and founder of JGA Recruitment, specialist HR recruiters. Tuning into the HR L&D Podcast will help you to discover strategic growth concepts, leadership development strategies, and the values and behaviours that drive organisational change and success. Together, let's empower our workforces, diversify our thinking, and achieve significant HR success.
Hello and welcome back to the HR L&D Podcast. My name is Nick Day, CEO at JGA Recruitment Group, and we are specialist HR recruiters. Now remember, if you enjoy the show, please do share it with all of your friends. Remember to review it, and let's all together raise the profile of HR and learning and development for everyone. Now today I'm really excited. We're going to be talking all about creating an impact on women in leadership. And I'm joined by an absolute expert in this field, Elizabeth Batalla, who has been in corporate for over 30 years. She's lectured at various academic institutions on this subject, and she's the founder of the Institute of Achievement and Excellence. There will be a link in the show notes for those that want to find out more about that business as well. So do not be afraid. You can go straight through to find out all about everything Elizabeth does later on in the show. Now, Elizabeth helps women level up in 9 life areas so they can achieve their professional and personal transformation goals. She does that to help them secure leadership roles and business opportunities, particularly in fields where it can be quite challenging. So, for example, at the moment, I know Liz is reaching out to diversity, equity and inclusion people in all sectors, but especially in male-dominated sectors like STEM industries. She wants to show how her experience can support their female talent programs to improve performance, engagement, and contribute and progress into leadership roles. She also helps companies better educate and promote their female talent, and she accomplishes this through self-paced masterclasses, tailored programs, and coaching. Her experience was also the driving force behind her fantastic book, Level Up to Move Up, the 3 forces in achieving excellence. And you'll be pleased to hear again, a link to that book will be directly available in the show notes. Now, although Elizabeth's focus is indeed on women, I personally believe her message is for everyone. And that's because Liz believes in being the change she wishes to see in the world. And she lives this by example. So today she's going to share what she's learned and implemented from her own journey. I'm really excited. Liz, welcome to the HR L&D Podcast. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling amazing. Thank you for having me on your show, Nick.
My absolute pleasure. I'm going to start with my first question. The first question I ask all of my guests on the show is, so what do the words human resources mean to you?
2 words, but big meaning. For me, human resources is all about, supporting, as it says, the human resource, the lifeblood of organizations from inception or induction all the way to conclusion or exit, both the organization as well as the individuals within that organization. It's a very, very wide responsibility, and it's the fundamental reason that why businesses can achieve success and what gives them the competitive edge against other businesses. But it's that intrinsic and extrinsic support to employees within an organization.
Fantastic. What a great response. What a great start to the show. Well, we're going to talk a lot about leadership in particular, but I know that your particular niche, your passion, is very much centered around female leadership. So why, from your perspective, Elizabeth, is female leadership in particular so important?
Oh, there's so many reasons, Nick, why it's important. In terms of female leadership, women make up 50% of the population. We are making decisions, and in fact most times the decision for the entire household. And as the world continues to grow and companies are more and more exposed over social media, through technology, etc., and people's needs and demands change, we want to see women, whether it's a different ethnicities, etc., diverse people want to see representation at leadership roles, in senior roles, in strategic roles, and women are no different to that. And in terms of, and this is just not my opinion, I remember reading a report by McKinsey and Company, their 2020 report. And they were stating that diverse teams, companies with broad diverse teams, are 45% likely to tap into new markets and 70% likely to see growth, profit growth. Those are massive numbers, absolutely huge numbers. And the downside to that is that they also stated that companies, there are just 15% of women in leadership executive teams, and a third of companies have no female representation at all. So for me, it is really, really important because it is something that companies can benefit from, the population can benefit from, and the client base of organizations can benefit from.
Wow. Well, that's a great education for everybody. I know there's a lot of study reports out there. I'm sure the HR cohorts that listen to this will be very familiar with the benefits of diversity of thoughts on boardrooms. But as much as we know, as much as we read about these statistics, I think PwC have released a report. I've certainly read the McKinsey one myself. Yes. We're still not seeing enough change happen. There's still a huge, a gap in the number of women that we're seeing in leadership roles. Although it's improving, it seems to be improving very slowly. What steps can we take? What do we need to do next to try and change this imbalance?
In terms of the steps that can be taken, it's two parts, Nick. One part is the woman herself. What can she do to level up herself, to step into that experience? And then the other part is the company themselves. What can they do to support, the woman in her journey? And this is why I look at things both intrinsically and extrinsically. And I say to women, as an individual, look at where you can leverage the company's extrinsic offering. So when they have things like sponsorship programs, mentorship programs, training, take advantage of that. I have worked in organizations where there is an L&D offering, there is budget for it, and the company is saying to people, step in, use the resources, and yet still no one puts themselves forward. We have to actively seek out opportunities. So that's one. In terms of the woman herself, that's the extrinsic part. The intrinsic part is for her to manage her own self. And this is where she has control. Is it confidence you're lacking? Then look at strengthening that. Do you feel overwhelmed easily? Find the trigger points in terms of what, causes that. So that's the female herself. And then there is the company. What can the company do? The company can look at things like their processes from induction, as I said, all the way to the exit. They can look at things like, do we have the correct programs in place? Do we have the correct training in place? Do we have programs that support women when they do want to step into those leadership roles? Even something as fundamental as the language used in job descriptions when, the organization is searching for that perfect person for their role. All of these things are things organizations and women can do to push that agenda forward.
You mentioned in that first point that often there are these L&D programs that are available. There are sponsorship opportunities available, but they're not always taken up by individuals. Do you think that that's, we'll ask you what's the reason you think that is behind that, but also do you think that that's linked to problems, well, I say problems, but issues 2 and 3, which is a lack of confidence potentially, or even because the language used maybe by the company doesn't always invite people in the right way to actually take up these courses? What do you think the reason is that people aren't perhaps always utilizing the budgets for the L&D programs when there are potentially opportunities available?
It can be a plethora of things. It can be the individual themselves where they don't quite feel motivated. They have a lot going on in their personal lives. They feel very overwhelmed and therefore don't have space or feel as if they don't have space for anything else. It can also be partly the organization where these programs are not, communicated in a way that makes people feel, yes, it's something that's beneficial to me, or it is only geared towards the upper level of the organization because, for instance, coaching programs may not be available to everyone. So, it can be a series of different things why these things are not taken on board.
Okay, interesting. Now, what I'd love to do in a moment is find out a little bit more about how we can work better, I guess, to create a more positive impact on our women leaders of tomorrow. Before I ask that question, Elizabeth, I'd love to know a little bit more if you can just perhaps tell our listeners about your own journey, because you are an entrepreneur, a founder of a wonderful business that's passionate about this subject area. Tell us a little bit about where this passion comes from and your own journey.
My journey, as you indicated in that wonderful intro, Nick, I have been in corporate for over 35 years and lectured at different universities, institutions. And my experience has been mainly in male-dominated environments, IT, oil and gas, banking, professional services. And throughout that time, it has been quite a challenge. Now, luckily for me, I have always been curious. I've always put myself forward for learning. I've always been proactive in making things happen and getting things done. And I have had the fortune of working with, coaches and mentors, etc. But it still has been a challenge. There were instances where in the IT sector, I was training very intricate IT systems, so Cisco routers, etc., very high-end stuff. And a gentleman walked into one of my training sessions, saw it was a female training, and promptly walked out and asked for his money to be refunded.
Wow.
And I would say, for me, that taught me, it stung a bit. It's because I at that point in time, it didn't register why. What I learned from that was, for every one person that may not want your services, that may not think you are capable, there are 15, 20, 50 others who want your services, who believe in you, who think you are capable. So don't focus on that one individual or those individuals. Focus on the people that you can help. And this is what has fueled me throughout my entire career. I kept focused on the value that I could bring into any situation, regardless of how small that value would have been at that point in time. If it added value, if it helped anyone, I was there. And I think that I took that through my entire career, and it has led me to the point where I am today.
Oh, fantastic. Well done. It shows me, you said earlier that you're very curious. You clearly have a very creative mind. Yes. I love that. There's a story that comes to mind when you mentioned that, and you may be familiar with it. I'll try and do this quickly so as not to take away from the content, but there's a story of two brothers that were shoemakers. I'm not sure where they go, but they go away to another country to build their business. And the country they go to, they discover when they arrive that no one in this country wears shoes. And the first shoemaker calls back to his family and his wife and his kids, and he says, this is a waste of my time. He said, no one here wears shoes. I won't be able to sell a thing. And he promptly returns home. The other shoemaker calls back to his family and says, oh my God, there's so much opportunity here. Nobody wears shoes. Pack your bags and move over. We're going to make so much money. It's just really interesting the way that individual that walked in and walked out. There's a certain mindset there that actually it's really painful to hear about it, that people like that do exist, and people are out there with such a closed mindset, really. Mm-hmm. But actually, if you have that curiosity and that creative mindset, you can have, wonderful things can happen, which is clearly evident in your own career, Elizabeth. And we're going to sort of find out more about that as we go through. But I guess keeping in that positive mindset place, that place of creativity, how can we then use your experience to describe how we can create a more positive impact on our women leaders of tomorrow?
In terms of how we can use that, there are three things that stand out. One, definitely, without a doubt, it's education. Education, it opens people's eyes, it broadens people's minds, and it helps women to understand. And I'm not saying that they don't understand, but for them to at least feel more confident with the thought that they do not need anyone to hold the door open for them. They have the key, and they can put that key into the lock, turn it, open it, and show up because they deserve to be there. So that's one, education. The next thing is exactly what you're doing, Nick, having platforms such as this where women have the ability, and anyone in particular, they have the ability to showcase, to share their insights, showcase what they have to say, share their insights with others. And then the final piece is, just taking advantage of everything that the world has to offer. We are technologically advanced. There are so many other platforms outside of what we are doing here and education that can be used and can be leveraged. So I would say, those three in particular.
Brilliant. I have to say, again, it'll be in the show notes, but as you say, we like to lead from the front. I mentioned that in my introduction. Elizabeth has a number of social profiles, and she very much is vocal in all of those and is able to help people, whether you want Instagram or Pinterest or whatever it be. And I'll make sure those links are available for those that, depending on which social channel you prefer. So do check those out later on in the show. You've talked a lot about, the ability to take on different educational pathways to help with your development, the ability to get onto different podcasts being one, or different mediums to elevate your voice and to show that you want to show up. Is there anything else individual women can do to be better prepared for leadership roles? It doesn't have to be women. I don't know why I've actually singled it out, but we're talking about women today. I guess it could be for anybody, but what can people do to best prepare themselves for leadership roles?
The key thing is just simply taking full responsibility for every choice, every action, every behavior that person chooses to do. Now, I know it sounds simple. Is it easy? Maybe not. It takes courage. It takes a certain degree of confidence. It takes tenacity. It takes gumption. It takes drive. However, the responsibility of how far you move in life, how far anyone moves in life. And yes, I get it. Sometimes we are in difficult circumstances, difficult situations, and that can dictate how much resources we have. And when I say personal resources, I'm looking at energy, I'm looking at time, and I'm looking at finances. Those things can impact. But the thing is, I've known many people. I've lectured, as I said, lectured at different universities, spoken to so many people. And sometimes the one person that you think would not succeed because they have everything going against them, they just have that hunger to survive and that hunger to succeed, that they have blown all of the obstacles out of the water. So I would say start with yourself. Look at the areas you have control over. Look at the areas that are impacting negatively on you. Can you eliminate them? If you can't eliminate them, can you at least reduce the impact they have? If you can't reduce the impact they have, then can you work on your own triggers so that having to be in that situation doesn't trigger you in a negative way and help you, make you lose your energy? It starts with you. It truly does.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's interesting because the new world of work now, you gave a little example there, sometimes the people you don't expect that really show up. And actually the new world of work now, with the world of virtual, as we are now on this podcast, but virtual interviewing and virtual work, we're finding a lot more introverted individuals coming to the fore and gaining more leadership roles, because actually those that show up and are loudest in the office now aren't necessarily having the same impact they would have had in this world of work. Yes. And hopefully that's a positive thing. I really thought it was interesting as well, and what you said there about, taking responsibility a little bit. And I'm a big, personally, this is a personal opinion here, big believer of removing the word should from your vocabulary. If you ever say, I should do this, I should have done that, you either did or you didn't. You've got to own that choice, make that decision, take the word should out. And if you believe you should do something, just go do it. If that's what's speaking to you, be brave, take 20 seconds of courage and go for it. And then own what comes next. Because I think a lot of us feel frightened, scared sometimes to make those steps. We know we should, as I mentioned, be doing these things, but for whatever reason, things are stopping us from taking those actions. What advice would you give to those individuals that, perhaps they're listening to this and it's striking a chord and they go, you know what, I want to put my best foot forward, but I've got these things holding me back. So they're in that should world. How can we move that should to do?
I would say be honest with yourself. The thing is, Nick, some of us are more risk averse than others. So, a single parent that have children and he is or she is the only breadwinner may be more adverse to taking risk than someone, living at home. And if they lose a certain degree of finances, it's not too impactful. We all have a certain degree of internal risk involved. So first of all, know yourself. Secondly, look at what you can do with fairly comfortably, still stretch yourself. We have those things called stretch goals. Look at what you can achieve and be realistic, as I always say, with your three main resources: your time, your energy, and your finances. Because it makes no sense saying, yeah, let's just, go for it and disregard the responsibilities you have as an adult. It's about making an informed choice. Now, there are certain times in our lives where, you just have to go for it. That's all it's either a yes or no. So I would say, if you are adverse to risk, look at what you need to live minimally, absolute minimally, so that you take that fear and that scare away from that aspect. And then look at what you can do to move forward. And sometimes it is just just go for it. Yeah. Many people feel afraid. You're not the only one who feels afraid of something new. We all do. I do at times, depending on how big the goal is. But I go for it anyway, provided that my foundation and what I consider core is protected, and then I jump.
Amazing. Well, of course, there are things we can do as well to help with this. So things out there like energy audits, we can do financial audits on ourselves, work out the things that are draining us of energy, things that give us energy, where, financially, the things we don't need, the things that we do, the essentials, as you mentioned. So there are things we can do for ourselves to help us form those decisions. What about the companies, though? What can companies do better to support female talent?
Well, one of the things that they can do better, which is, recently it's part of now statutory right, is to provide flexible working hours. Oh. Simply because, we live in a society where women are still predominantly are the carers. They still predominantly are the ones who look after the children. So it only holds true that flexible working hours, it's needed. So that's a step in the right direction. Another thing that organizations can do is look at what they offer internally. Look at their training programs, their sponsorship programs, their mentorship programs. Look at the levels at which they are offering these things. They can look at their end-to-end processes. What do they do for the new recruits coming in? How do they treat the staff throughout the employee life cycle? When it's time for that employee to exit, are there robust exit interviews? And when those exit interviews are concluded, does the company actually implement anything that they need to make their work environment and the culture more supportive or better or more encouraging? So there are many, many things that organizations can do.
Hopefully, and let's listen to what you say, because I couldn't agree more with everything you've said there. But I think also, hopefully, we're seeing a little bit more of a move towards transparency from companies as well.
Yes.
I attended a wonderful conversation. She's going to be a future guest on the show with Bev Thorogood. And I invited her to the guest after seeing a show, which was all about menopause awareness and how that can impact women at work. And actually, companies need to be more transparent and more supportive of issues that do impact female leaders, to know that they've got that support there to thrive. That's what we want to try and create for everybody. And that includes, pay transparency, includes support for things like menopause, which obviously impacts women much more than it does men. So, there are things I think companies can do as well from that side. And are you seeing companies starting to take the right steps? Are you seeing enough happen at the moment?
Have you ever asked yourself, how can any recruiter understand my HR recruitment challenges? Please don't give up on your hiring challenges just yet. Here at JGA HR Recruitment, we appreciate the difficulties associated with attracting, recruiting and retaining top human resources talent. We also understand just how costly a poor hire can be. JGA HR Recruitment would like to partner with you to help you overcome your hiring challenges. Contact us today on 01727 800 377 or visit jgarecruitment.com to find out more.
I think there are companies out there that are starting to take the right steps. Is it sufficient? No, more can still be done, because in many organizations, and as I said, Nick, I have worked in quite a few organizations, it's still pretty much a checkbox. It's still pretty much part of the mission statement, or a lovely page on the website, or a post in social media. So I'm not saying that companies aren't doing the best. We are living in volatile times, challenging times. Companies are trying, but there's still so much more that can be done. So much more.
And what role do you think transparency does play in improving female leaders of tomorrow?
It exposes many things. Transparency, one, for example, the pay gap. The second thing, if we're talking transparency in terms of policies and procedures and rules, it sort of levels the playing field. If we're talking transparency in terms of decisions that are made in the boardrooms, it helps organizations and it helps people understand the direction that the organization wants to take. Easier, better, simpler. And it helps people to be more aligned with the vision of that organization. So transparency helps everyone, not just the individual, but the organization as well.
Couldn't agree more. And we're seeing, I work in a world of recruitment now, and we're seeing Gen Z and the Alpha Gen coming through. It's really important that a lot of their decisions now are made on the company values and what are they doing for others, and transparency. And actually, companies are missing out on some brilliant talent, because talent are making the choices now, where they're choosing where they want to work. They have that power. And I think it's really important now that if companies want to secure the best talent for tomorrow, they need to be more transparent. They need to really live and own their values and their mission statements, rather than just have them for, marketing purposes, so to speak. So tell us a little bit more about, Elizabeth, about the work that you're doing at the moment, specifically with supporting female leaders.
So the Institute for Achievement and Excellence, it's for everyone, but the focus is on women, and it's helping the woman take control of the area that she has complete control over herself. And I do that by looking at 9 life areas. So we look at things like the personal brand, the demeanor, how she carries herself, walk, talk, etc. Her personal style, her physical, mental, and emotional health. Those are 3. Finances, how she looks at her future, and how she navigates the professional world. So it's quite broad. It it takes a holistic approach to leveling up. So I like to look at it like a dimmer switch. It's not that you have to be perfect in any one area. It's not about perfection. It's about excellence. And they're completely different. Excellence is about showing up your best, using the resources you have, doing the best that you can, and being the best that you can be. So we look at it across those 9 life areas to help, women level up holistically so that they can then tap into their genius, their potential, etc. And, use that to navigate the personal world better, the professional world better, excuse me. And I do that through a series of masterclasses, online masterclasses, coaching, consultancy, negotiations, etc. So that's how it all comes together.
Fantastic. Well, I'm working as an executive coach myself, so it sounds a lot of this work is about raising awareness. And
Yes.
It's often, we often teach the things that we most need to learn ourselves, right? And it's very easy for me to say to someone else I work with, you need to be better with your time management and you need to have a better work-life balance. And I find in myself, I don't live those values myself. I'm working way too late and I'm advising someone else to do the things that I need to do more. But the truth is, we very rarely look at ourselves we are very rarely ask ourselves those questions. So it seems really powerful to me to have someone like you that female leaders can go to help raise that awareness, to know, where their blind spots may be. I don't know if that's the right word, but is that kind of part of the journey that you take them through, sort of identifying blind spots, identifying strengths? And tell me a little bit about the journey you take an individual through.
Sure. The first thing that I do is we get them to do an assessment, and the assessment it contains questions so that I can understand where where their strengths, and I don't like to say weaknesses, but areas for improvement across
Sure.
the 9 life areas. And 9 life areas sounds like a lot, and it actually is not. It again, because it's not about perfection in each area. It's simply about their strengths and how you can show up as excellent in each area. So the assessment, they would go through the assessment, and then based on the assessment, that individual has many choices, whether they want to do the online masterclasses or whether they want to work with me or whether they want to work with me via the company. And the whole thing about the content, Nick, is that it takes a sort of a different approach. It's not the typical, let's communicate like this or stand up and use PowerPoint like this. Not that there's anything wrong with that,
Yeah.
but it goes a bit deeper. It's all about almost personal development and how that can then be translated into the business environment. So for instance, one of the things I talk about is narcissism. And, if the woman is experiencing that personally, what can she do and how can she translate that behavior into, or the steps that she can take to deal with that type of behavior into the working world? For instance, if she has to deal with a narcissistic boss. We look at things like not just confidence. We look at it in terms of the 3 C's: courage, confidence, and charisma. Because it takes a certain degree of courage to have that confidence, and there's a certain degree of confidence that's required to have the charisma that is needed to inspire others.
Love
See,
that.
so
Lovely.
it is a different approach, but all of the examples, the challenges, the solutions, the tips, the tricks are what you can do in the professional environment.
Perfect.
So
And I don't know if
different.
it's the same assessment, but you do offer a free assessment on your website, don't you? Which talks about areas of your life that needs immediate attention. Is that the same assessment you're referring to? Because if it is, anyone listening to this can go to your website and take this as a completely free assessment. It does give a lot of insight into the background of what you're talking about those 9 lives. I mean, there's a number of other resources as well, so do go to the website. But is that the same assessment that you're referring to?
Yes, it is the same assessment. It is free. Just go onto the website, take the assessment, and then the choice is yours. You can either work with me or not to. This is not about selling. This is about you realizing where you need to improve and where your strengths are, so you can work on those and move forward in your career journey, both professionally and personally.
Sure. It's raising that awareness we just mentioned, isn't it, really? Which is really, really important. I loved on your website as well, you have, you included a Judy Garland quote. I think it's the only quote I found on your website. So I'm really interested to know why in particular that one resonated, although the quote itself might give us some of that away. The quote says, "Be a first-rate version of yourself and not a second-rate version of someone else." Tell us a little bit about why that quote in particular, because I think it's the only quote on your site really resonated with you.
Yes, that's the only quote I believe I have used. That's not a quote that I have created.
Sure, Judy Garland.
Yes, Judy Garland. Yes, that really resonated simply because I think one of the main reasons why I have been successful in my own life, in my own career, it's because I chose to be authentic to who I am, to be my authentic self. And I believe in a world where, there is so much that can be given. The one thing that can differentiate someone, the one thing that where you can really add value is being your authentic self. And it's, we live in a world where there's so much comparison to others. There's so much, oh, I need to be like this person or do what this person is doing to achieve the same level of success. And I would say to that, yes, to a certain degree. But then what differentiates you from being good to being absolutely great is intrinsic to you, the individual.
Yeah, and we hear it so often, and it's become a cliche, but it's the most important cliche out there, really, which is find your why. When you understand that, it can just power. I mean, look at you're a great walking example of this, Elizabeth. You found your why, and it's powered you to entrepreneurship, to found this company, to do great work, to, every day is a day where you are, moving a little step closer towards your goal of empowering women in leadership roles, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I'll be interested to know, what are the challenges that you are being faced with then? You mentioned in the introduction here, you're trying to challenge some STEM businesses as an example where we know that females in leadership roles is not very prevalent in those kind of subject areas and those subjects. What are the challenges that you're faced with when you approach these businesses and say, look, I want to work with you. I want to try and improve not just your leadership, female leadership, but actually equality, diversity, inclusion across all, diversity as a general rule within your business. Are you facing many challenges? Do you get much pushback?
I believe the main pushback is the lack of a sense of urgency. Okay. In terms of how important this is, and this can be to the organization, to the women in their organization, to the diverse groups in the organization, and to the impact that can bring to the organization. So for me, it's about the sense of urgency. Yes, organizations understand that it's important. Yes, they understand that it's something that needs to be implemented, but there seems to be the lack of urgency of how critical it is to push these types of agendas forward. And one of the things I've realized is that for me, it's, getting them to understand that not only is it urgent, it is urgent for all. It's not just about the executive team. It's also mid-management. It's also the women or, entering the organization, because we all have something to contribute to the organization, and it all adds up to the bottom line of the company. So I would say predominantly is the lack of urgency, and that the benefit of such programs can bring.
It's ironic, I think, because you mentioned right at the start of this, the McKinsey report alone tells you that the sooner you do this, the quicker you're going to get better profits, more diversity of thought. The metrics are positive across the board, I think, in pretty much every study that I've read, which seems crazy to me that anyone would have any kind of why they'd want to delay this. Because the quicker they implement, the quicker they make change, the quicker they're going to see a better results on their bottom line. So do you think a lot of that challenge does manifest itself from the male people that are controlling those boardrooms, because there's a fear there? I don't know. I'm just wondering, where all the science, all the studies tell you you should be doing this now, why would you delay it?
That is a very, very good question. And the answer to that is simply a human one. We are naturally averse to anything different. Right? Anything different requires effort. It requires understanding. It requires tolerance. And I'm not saying that, the board doesn't have that. What I'm saying is that because of that human nature, we are designed for the path of least resistance.
Sure.
Yeah. It's not just about companies. What makes up companies? People. The majority, it's predominantly people. Yes, we have processes and procedures and rules, but it's people. And at the fundamental heart of that, we align ourselves, or we find it easier to align ourselves with people we know, people who are similar to us, because anything else requires a certain degree of trust in the unknown. Yeah. And as a result, with things being so volatile, people are pressed for time, etc., it takes a certain degree of courage to invite someone who is different to you in your space and in a space where their decisions impact the direction that the company is going. So even though it's not new ground, we are asking people to change their attitudes, their outlook, something fundamental to them, something that in their mind, tribally, it is a protective mechanism. It's not impossible, but it's not easy either. So what I would say to that is that we are moving in the right direction. We are not moving fast enough. However, this is, fundamentally perhaps why that fear is there. The fear of just the difference being different.
I think it's the fear. Yeah, I think that's the nail on the head for me. And we've got, there's a whole new podcast we could talk about unconscious bias, affinity bias, and all those things that play into this. But there is a fear, it's that uncertainty. And we're fearful of uncertainty. And yet it seems crazy when you look at the studies that back this up. And one question I guess I want to bring to the fore for those that want to find out more. I want to read your wonderful book, which is called Level Up to Move Up, The 3 Forces in Achieving Excellence. Tell us a little bit more about the inspiration behind the book, although I'm pretty sure people will have an understanding of that already, having listened to you so far today during the show, but also in particular what the readers can gain from it. Because I read a wonderful review on this book and the individual said, this is a modern woman's roadmap to becoming unstoppable, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Tell us a bit about the inspiration behind it and perhaps what the readers can take away.
The inspiration behind that, as you rightfully said, Nick, it's my why. Because I honestly believe until someone does work on themselves, it's very, very difficult for them to move up, whether it's their personal life or their professional life. It's very difficult to step into a new space, to step into a higher space, because with progress comes greater challenge, comes, bigger challenges. And even if someone is lucky enough to step into a leadership role without necessarily, and I say in quotes, doing the work on themselves, it becomes very clear very quickly that this person is not a leader. They may be a manager, but they are not necessarily a leader, someone who can inspire people and bring people along the journey with them and help the organization achieve their ultimate goal. So when you work on yourself, you are prepared to step into those roles. And when you are ready to take on the challenges that your life and your business or your profession has to offer, and you are mature in that aspect, not only do you improve as an individual and take your company along with you, but you inspire others along the way. And that is the ultimate.
Love that. As Stephen Covey said, trust and inspire. And it's so true. Now, you are welcome to decline this opportunity, but it brings something to my mind. And there's a coaching technique called the 5 whys. I won't do that now. But I wondered, for those that are trying to find their why, would you be comfortable if I played a little exercise with you and asked you just maybe 3 levels of why? Maybe the first question being why you wrote the book. And if you don't mind me asking this, I mean, by all means say, actually, let's move on. But I'll ask you the question and you can decline if you wish. But why did you write the book?
Because we all learn in different ways. Some people learn through interacting, which is why I have the coaching. Some people need a program, which is why I have the courses. Some prefer to curl up, under a duvet, their cup of coffee or tea, and just simply read. We all learn in different ways. And I know fundamentally that the information contained, whether it's through the coaching, the programs, the book, is vital, it's helpful, it's useful, it can be life-changing, and not only for the individual, but for the people the lives that individual touches. So it's a ripple effect. And I wanted to reach as many people as I could. So the book was one aspect to that.
Super. I'm going to go to level 2. So why is that so important to you to reach as many people as you could?
For me, the impact, I want to have a massive impact. That's my desire. I want to, see women in leadership roles, more women in leadership roles. I want to see the confidence. I have spent 35 plus years hearing, women talk about the tragedies and the challenges they face and how difficult the road has been, and they're not quite sure what to do, where to go, what to say. And I personally want to help as many people as I can at different price points. And selfishly, it just makes me feel darn good.
Okay, we could take this many levels. I'm going to do one more. Last one. Why does it make you feel so darn good?
We all are here for a reason. I believe my reason has always been to help in whatever capacity I can. And I guess that's a fundamental reason for all.
Sure.
But it makes me feel good because it makes me recognize that my impact is not just family, it's not just friends, it's the wider community. And why does that make me feel great? Because the more people I feel great, it's just like a mirror.
It's changing lives.
Yeah, it's changing lives, and the lives of those people touch as well.
Now, we could definitely take that further. By the way, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being brave and going through that process with me. But I wanted to bring it to life because there are people that are going to be listening to this who want to step into leadership roles and haven't found their why. And I would say, ask yourself not why, not just once, but twice, 3 times, 4, maybe even 5 times. Get right to the heart of what it is that really is speaking to you as to why you want to achieve what you want to achieve. And I think if you can do that, then you can, as you are a walking example of, live, breathe, and live a life that gives you meaning, that is authentic, which you clearly are, and actually makes a real difference in the world. So I massively commend you for that, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for bringing your passion to the show. I'm going to open the HR L&D vault, which are just 3 short, sharp questions.
Opening the L&D vault.
If you could give one piece of advice to the world, what would it be?
I would say start where you are, use what you have, and do the best that you can consistently. Your small steps do not have to be grand to be great. And you can change worlds with a series of small, consistent steps.
Wow, love that. Love that. I've got to try and remember that little quote in my mind. I might re-quote you there, Elizabeth. If you had the opportunity, what advice would you give to a younger you just starting out in this new world of work?
Don't worry too much about what other people have to say. Listen so that if there is something that you need to do, take on board and tweak or help you strengthen who you are, then that's fine. But don't let anyone take your joy away from you, and keep moving forward regardless.
Wonderful. Fantastic. And my last question is, what is the guiding principle or behavior that you've seen in every great leader that you've worked with?
A certain degree of humility, because a leader knows that whatever he or she achieves, it's not only because of him or her, it's also because of the people that walk the path as well. And it takes a certain degree of humility to recognize that and to act upon it.
Love that. Fantastic. Elizabeth, it's been an absolute wonderful show. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I could speak to you for hours. We could open up conversations on unconscious bias and more. Maybe we'll have you back to do that another day. But look, for those that are interested in finding out more, please do go to the show notes. You can find out more about the book there. There's a link directly through to the site to purchase your own copy. It's called Level Up to Move Up, the 3 Forces in Achieving Excellence. Of course, there'll also be a link to the wonderful website, which is achievementandexcellence.com. Now, on that site, there are blogs, there are resources, and of course, that free assessment you can access. I'll also put a link to that free assessment in the show notes as well. There'll also be links to Elizabeth Battalla's LinkedIn profile, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and her blog, all in the show notes. Loads of material for people to get involved in. I just want to say a huge thank you again to you for joining on the show. And of course, if you're an HR L&D professional listening to this show right now or watching it if you're on YouTube and you need support with a particular HR L&D recruitment related vacancy, then please do get in touch with either myself or my wonderful team at JGA Recruitment. Again, the link will also be in the show notes, or you can access it at jgarecruitment.com. Just leaves me one more chance to say thank you so much, Elizabeth Batalla, for joining me today on the HR L&D podcast. I look forward to being the next episode real soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the HR L&D podcast with your host, Nick Day, CEO of JGA Recruitment Specialist HR Recruiters. If you need any help with a current HR or L&D vacancy, then please get in touch with Nick and his team. All contact details can be found in the episode notes. In the meantime, to make sure you never miss a future episode, please subscribe to the show through any of your favorite podcast channels. Till next time.